afternoon, football fans. We got a big football weekend ahead of us. Obviously, we've got the Florida Gators and Alabama Crimson Tide here. Tomorrow morning, we'll get into that into Dixie Football Nation here on the Armchair Quarterbacks. But today, we're talking fantasy football. That is the thing at hand. And let's go ahead and dive into it as we are set for what should be one heck of a fantasy football weekend. All right, I'm going to do my top picks in quarterbacks, running backs, and wide receivers. We'll take a couple of stabs at the tight ends. But if you don't hear the obvious names at the very beginning, it's because they're in my very top, and if they're on your roster, you start them. So I'm not going to do deep dives on CMC or Derrick Henry, right? We're going to do the rankings just below that. So let's go ahead and start with the running backs because that is the one spot that everyone is always concerned with. And I'm looking at their absolute floor. What is the worst that you could get out of this? Because the ceilings can be debated left and right, but what you're worried about is trying to get a W if you got a loss in week one, or if you won in week one, you're trying to build off of that momentum. So let's go ahead and start with what would be essentially going out of just outside the top 10. Who do I have next? Who do I have them ranked? I got Najee Harris sitting at a number 11, and we'll go from there. I won't rattle off all the numbers. We're just going to talk about the players. Najee Harris is going up against the Las Vegas Raiders. I know he was disappointed in week one. He should have a very good week in week two. We'll obviously not be talking about the Washington Redskins, Washington football team, or New York Giants players as they played last night. So we'll skip those names, obviously. The next guy on the list to me is Chris Carson. I put Chris Carson, Ezekiel Elliott, and David Montgomery, all of them just a little above Jonathan Taylor. I know if you drafted Jonathan Taylor, first of all, you shouldn't have drafted him in the first round. That was a mistake. But if you drafted Jonathan Taylor, you probably got him bare minimum somewhere in the second round. This is a tough matchup. It's also worried about gameplay. He could fall behind early. But if you have him, you're probably starting him. The next tier that we'll hit with, I've actually got Miles Sanders above the Detroit Lions, DeAndre Swift, and above Kansas City's CEH, as we like to call it. Sanders should be set for a decent game. Not a great game, but a decent game. And going up against the San Francisco 49er defense, yeah, that could be daunting, but they gave up a lot of garbage points, and this should be a fun game. So you want to have your Miles Sanders in there. Darrell Henderson, same situation. I've got him just a little below CEH, Swift, and Sanders. Damian Harris should bounce back in a big way against the Jets. I know he had the disappointing fumble at the end of the game. If he is going to make himself known in that Patriots locker room, he will absolutely, positively have a good game in this game, because I believe as long as Belichick has been coaching, he knows guys are going to make mistakes. He knows it's going to happen. But at that same token, he's looking to see how they respond. And if Damian Harris is worth his salt, he'll have a big game against that Jets defense that got torched in week one by CMC. The next guy on my list, I'll put into the next tier as we go on here. I've got Kareem Hunt, I've got Gaskin, and I've got Javonte Williams all above Melvin Gordon III. I get it. Melvin Gordon had a good game on week one. It was also predicated off that one big run. You take that big run away, it was a terrible game. You can't rely on that. Javonte Williams is going to get more carries against that Jaguar defense. I believe he's the play over Gordon. We go on to the next tier. Now, this is a guy that we're going to get a lot of questions about. James Robinson, Tyson Williams, Josh Jacobs, Eli Mitchell. Where do we have that? All right, I'm going to put Mitchell above all of them with my number 2 guy on that list. I think I'm going to go Tyson Williams. They're going to try to keep Kansas City off the field. There's no way that they don't do that. And they're going to try to run, and the only way to do that is give the ball to Tyson Williams. Josh Jacobs would then go above James Robinson. James Robinson just concerns the heck out of me, to be honest with you. They didn't use him nearly enough. Maybe Urban Meyer and company learned their lesson, and they put the much more talented running back in charge in week number 2. But he is a risky play because it's a good Denver defense. All right, the next guy up on the list, the next tier that we go with, Give me Nyheim Hines above Jamal Williams, above James Conner, Kenyon Drake, Ronald Jones Jr., A.J. Dillon, James White. I do believe A.J. Dillon could have a breakout game Monday night, because if the script goes according to plan, Detroit is going to lose and lose in a big way, and that could be A.J. Dillon time in the second half. So if you're looking for something that might hit, A.J. Dillon could get a lot of carries in that second half, as if they put the game away, they're not trying to get any of their major stars hurt, including Aaron Jones. All right, after that, my next group would be you're looking at the Gainwells and the Fournettes and Carlos Hyde, Mark Ingram. Where do all these guys follow? To me, it's kind of a no-brainer. I'm going to get Mark Ingram at the very top of that next tier, because Mark Ingram got 26 carries in week 1. You figure he's going to get somewhere around 15 plus in week 2. It'll be a different game script. They shouldn't have a dominating lead like they did against the Jaguars, but Ingram should get fed well. Gainwell would be my next one on that list. Gainwell is definitely the guy that I would go to. By the way, Ronald Jones III to me falls all the way down. I don't care if they're saying he's going to start, and I don't care if they're saying that he's still the starter, blah, blah, blah. He has yet to show that he is a better running back than Leonard Fournette or Giovanni Bernard. And if they get to chucking the ball around, it's going to be Bernard. If they get to salting the game away after they get a big lead on Atlanta like they should, I believe Fournette's going to eat into a lot of those carries. Rojo might get some dirt carries at the very end, some garbage carries, but at that point they could be emptying the entire basket and not trying to get anyone hurt. So I think Rojo is a very, very risky play this week. Carlos Hyde, this is where he falls in. You wonder, is he going to be the dominant carrier in this offense? We're going to find out. If they didn't learn their lesson after week 1, then Carlos Hyde's a guy that you're definitely going to want to grab. If he's out there on the waiver wire and you have James Robinson, you better grab him, because right now it doesn't look like the Jaguar offensive coordinators know what the heck they're doing, and they're not putting the best players in the best place to succeed, which would be James Robinson is by far the most talented running back on that roster, and it's not even close. Not counting ETN, we know he's out for the season, but it's not even close. But it seems like it's the stubbornness of Urban Meyer to only go with his guys he drafted, guys that played for him. Hyde played for him in college. It really seems like that's what's going on here, which is such a petty and stupid way to run a NFL team. So even though he denies it now, Home Slice might be out there in Southern California before it's all said and done. USC might come a-calling, and if the Jaguars are 1-13 in December, you never know. He says the right things here in September. What's he going to say in December? All right, moving on from the next tier, and this will be the final tier that we'll hit. We'll go to receivers after that. Tevin Coleman, Cordell Patterson, Giovanni Bernard, Damian Williams, Latavius Murray. These are all guys that are, McKissick would have been in that role, but McKissick was actually used quite a bit in Washington. So depending on how your rules are set up, if he's out there in a full PPR league, you might want to grab him. If not, it is what it is. You'll have to hit the waiver wire on Wednesday. So speaking of that, we do a waiver wire show, so grab that every Tuesday here. All right. The next thing with this next tier, this is how I have it. This is the floor. Tevin Coleman could get a lot of usage against a team in New England that should dominate the game, and they're going to be playing from behind. So keep it on Tevin Coleman with his speed and catching out of the backfield, etc. Cordell Patterson is an interesting player. In other weeks, I don't like him against Tampa Bay for obvious reasons. But Giovanni Bernard, he vaults to the top of this tier. He is a guy that I believe could have a big, big game against Atlanta. They have a sieve of a defense, and a guy who plays a similar position in Gainwell for Philadelphia had a very good game against Atlanta in week 1. Just look at Giovanni Bernard as Tampa Bay's version of Gainwell. And if you're in deeper leagues, deeper plays, if you're going DFS, I like him at the top of that list. All right. It's time to switch over to the wide receivers. Okay, so here we go with the wide receivers. And if I name these guys, start them, don't even think about it. Don't be a dope. It's Adams, Hill, Hopkins, Diggs, Metcalf, Allen, Ridley, Brown, Justin Jefferson, Amari Cooper, Allen Robinson, Lamb, Lockett, Thielen, Kupp. That's the list. Start them. Don't be a dope. Seriously doubt you have more than 2 of those guys on your team. And if you do, then slide them into the flex. If you don't have a flex, you need to talk to the commissioner about that. So let's start on the next tier of receivers. Guys that you're on the fence on whether or not, should I start this guy, should I start that guy? All right, so let's go ahead and start this with, I like the floor of Deebo Samuels against that Philly defense. The Philly defense looked good against Atlanta. Atlanta just could be one of the worst teams in football. And they're going to have a long climb back, although I don't think Atlanta's going to look as bad in week 1 as they will down the road. But that's neither here nor there. Deebo Samuel would be the top of my list of the next group. After that, because of the game situation, I believe Deontay Johnson. They're at home. They're against the Raiders. Deontay Johnson. You get into then Chris Godwin against Atlanta. I have him just barely over Mike Evans against Atlanta because of the yards. I think they'll both score. T. Higgins would be the next guy, and then Antonio Brown. So realistically, you can put those 3 Tampa Bay receivers interchangeable. They should all have three really big games. T. Higgins should have a good game against Chicago. Chicago got torched against the Rams. They're not that bad. The Rams are just really good. So T. Higgins should have a good game. Just don't expect the moon and stars. Robert Woods, who a lot of people are fading this week, it's a little stupid. Robert Woods is going to have a game. He's going to be in the dome against that Indianapolis defense, which is suspect at best. You saw what Seattle did to them in week 1. Robert Woods should have himself a game. Julio Jones, I'm a little concerned with. We'll take this to the next tier. I'm not going to lie to you on this. I'm a little concerned about the fact that he's new. It takes a while for receivers to work in, and they're going to Seattle, and it is very hard to hear the 12th man is back. So just above him, give me Devontae Smith. Give me Jamar Chase. Definitely give me Mike Williams. I would put Mike Williams above Smith and Chase, and then Julio Jones would go around somewhere around the Chase Claypool, Jarvis Landry area, where most teams you're probably starting him, but unless your team's really loaded, has a great matchup, you're probably starting Julio, but he's probably more of a flex. Maybe he's a wide receiver too if you went early on running backs. After that, Brandon Cooks in Cleveland, he should have a good game. Now I'm concerned with Corey Davis's game script in New England. New England's going to try to dominate not only the line of scrimmage with the running game, but I think they will have Zach Wilson running for his life. That he concerns me a little bit. Just above him, I would have guys like Laviska Shenault. We're wondering about Marquise Brown. He was out for practice, but at this point, that could be. Remember, his Thursday is everyone else's Wednesday. You usually see a lot of veterans take the Wednesdays off. So remember, they played Monday night, so it could just be rest. Keep an eye on that one. Above Marquise Brown, I like DJ Chark. I think he has a chance. Him and Marvin Jones Jr. have a chance to outscore Marquise Brown. Jacoby Myers, I'd rather have him in the lineup than Marquise Brown. Cortland Sutton, same thing. Marquise Brown falls in the Juju Smith-Schuster, the Cole Beasley, and then what is going on with Tyler Boyd? I would go ahead and put Tyler Boyd above those guys because I'm going to go off of his track record and just look at the week 1 just being something that it's not going to happen every week. But you need to keep an eye on that because they have 2 really talented receivers in Higgins and in Chase. And if this becomes a trend, you got to start dropping Boyd all the way down. Boyd's going to be right at the top of the next tier, which would be Devontae Parker, Robbie Anderson, who I would have above him. Jalen Waddle is one that you want to keep on. You want to keep a look at him. He may not make your starting roster today, this week, but if you've got him or if he's out there on the waiver wire, he's someone to really keep an eye on. Remember, him and Tua had a very good rapport when they were at Alabama together, and he already went to him quite a bit in week number 1. The next tier after that is your Aguilars, your Kirks, your Pittmans, your Watkins, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to start it off with, I think, the number one guy that I put at that, if it's a PPR, if it's a half-point PPR, if it's a full-point PPR, regardless, these are kind of interchangeable. Give me Christian Kirk against that Minnesota defense. After that, I'm going to lean with Sammy Watkins because of game script. They could be playing from behind, and especially if Marquise Brown ends up being out of the game because of injury, Sammy Watkins is going to be a very big pickup, so keep an eye on that. Brandon Ayuk is a guy that I'm a little nervous. If you got other options, leave him out of your lineup because we want to see what happens in week number 2. The beat reporters came out and said he didn't play much because he fell out of favor with the coaching staff. The coaching staff is saying that they were being very cautious with his injury. So the proof will be in the pudding this weekend. If Ayuk plays a little more this weekend, maybe they're building him up. You may not see this kind of production until about week 4, week 5-ish, but you want to keep an eye. How many snaps does he get? How many targets does he get? Ayuk is a guy you want to keep an eye on. I just don't feel comfortable in telling you to start him. KJ Hamler is another guy. I've actually got Tim Patrick above KJ Hamler because I think Tim Patrick is going to get more receptions, more targets, especially around the red zone because of his size. Darnell Mooney is an interesting play. I just feel better about Chicago receivers when Justin Fields comes into the game. The Red Rocket is not launching anytime soon, and I'm steering away from Bears receivers until I see Fields come in. The next group of guys that you're looking at, so that's the bottom tier. That's where the Ayuk sits. Like I said, I would just prefer to sit him. Gabriel Davis is a guy that you really need to keep an eye on and keep him above. At the very end, the final tier that we're going to do today, Gabriel Davis, he doesn't get a load of targets, but they look for him in the end zone, in the red zone. And it's because his size, he's much bigger than a lot of the other receivers on the Bills wide receiving core. He doesn't have blazing speed. He's not a guy that moves the chains at midfield, but Davis has an uncanny knack of getting open in the end zone. And that's why he's a good dart throw. If you're in DFS, if you're in a deep league and you're looking for someone to go with, I like his possibilities. Same thing with Van Jefferson. Van Jefferson might have a chance to have a score against that Indianapolis defense that kind of fell apart. And I believe it's not that the Indianapolis defense is so bad. It's the fact that Carson Wentz and company couldn't stay on the field and you eventually wear down. I don't trust Russell Gage right now. Don't give me any shares of Russell Gage until he shows that he has changed up in his target share. Don't give me any Russell Gage until I see it improve on his target share. He was a guy that had a couple of decent games last year. Some of us drafted him late in deeper leagues. I think he's unrosterable right now. I would rather take a chance on like I mentioned before, Tim Patrick goes to the top of this list. Emmanuel Sanders, Terrace Marshall Jr. is a guy that you can put out there. Cordell Patterson is interesting because you can slide him at running back and wide receiver. And in a really deep league, you can have him as a guy that can give you some depth at both positions. Now, I don't think he's going to have a lot of really big games, but when the matchup is fair, Cordell Patterson can explode, and especially if they're going to be at home, if they're going to be on that turf. Patterson's a guy to keep in your back pocket. Zac Pasqual is the guy that is at the bottom of most people's list. But look, he had 2 scores. He's going to be going up against the Rams. I don't like the matchup considering that Rams secondary. But with that being said, game script, they're down by a bunch and they're chucking it all over the field. He looks like he's the drug of choice for Carson Wentz. So I like him. Remember something else. Keep an eye on this. I'm a little skeptical of starting him in week 1 or week 2, but it's his week 1. Will Fuller has come off the suspension list. So he's a free agent in a lot of league. and it looks like he's available in about 45% of league. Will Fuller could be the best receiver on that Miami Dolphins roster, but what's his chemistry going to be with Tua? That game could get high scoring. That could be a good dart throw, especially in DFS. He should be really, really affordable. And we'll throw one more out at you. Considering game script, you've got a very talented Minnesota offense that's coming into Arizona. Rondale Moore is a guy that you can take a risk on in DFS. I don't know if I would do him in a lot of season-long leagues. Not quite yet. I want to see who really is the guy that's going to step up. After D-Hop, you got a lot of arguments on who might be the long-term get there. I don't believe it's A.J. Green because I do believe he's past his prime. It's more of the Kirk versus Moore type of argument. And right now I'm leaning Kirk, but Rondale Moore does have some exciting upside. Let's move over to the quarterbacks. All right, with the quarterbacks, obviously, if you've got Kyler, Patrick Mahomes, if you've got Russell, if you've got Josh Allen, Herbert, Brady, Prescott, Lamar Jackson, you're starting him. Don't be stupid. Aaron Rodgers falls in that same. I know everybody's freaked out about Aaron Rodgers and his terrible performance in week number 1. He is going to be playing the Detroit Lions on Monday Night Football. Are you serious? You got to put him in your lineup. Now, that's where the next tier comes in. The guys where you're like, all right, well, where am I going with this? There's a lot of arguments back and forth, but I'm going to go ahead and hit you with who I think is the one to have. Now, obviously, your scoring system has a lot to do with this. If you've got a scoring system in which the the quarterback gets 4 points per touchdown, but 6 points per rushing touchdown, obviously guys like Jalen Hurts go up your list. But if it's a now traditional, most leagues now are 6 points. That what you have now, 6 points for a passing touchdown is what you have here is some guys that are interchangeable. But this is my list on the guys that I think you put at the top. Give me Jameis Winston. I'll take Jameis Winston over Jalen Hurts just by a little because of the matchup. Matt Stafford right after that. Then that's where I put Tannehill. I think Tannehill will have a bounce back, but it remains to be seen. I just assume they're going to have to score a lot of points to beat Seattle. I expect to see a better Tennessee Titan football team out there in week number 2. Right after that, I like Baker Mayfield. I like Baker Mayfield a lot this week. He's at home against the Texans. That just smells like 4 touchdowns and 300+ yards. So then we go to the next tier. Joe Burrow going into Chicago should be a pretty favorable matchup. I've got him over guys like Matt Ryan, who are going to have a very difficult night, very, very difficult day against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Right below that, I'm actually putting Teddy Bridgewater above Ryan this week. Teddy Bridgewater should have a much better game. He's going to be in Jacksonville. Jacksonville was a sieve last week. So I've got Burrow. I've got Bridgewater. You've got to put Ben Roethlisberger there because remember, he's done this for years. He's much better at home as far as his passing numbers than he is on the road. He's at home, and he's at home against the Raiders defense. After that is where I would slide Matt Ryan in just because of his track record. But I'll tell you what, it wouldn't take me much to be talked into Trevor Lawrence, Mac Jones. All these guys have much more favorable matchups in week number 2 than what Matt Ryan does. Matt Ryan's a guy that you might be able to, essentially, depending on what's out there, you might be able to drop him and pick up something else. 2-quarterback league, you're in a different situation. Derek Carr, I like what he did on Monday night. It's a short week, and he's going to Pittsburgh. I think he'll struggle this week. So a couple of guys that I've got just over Derek Carr. I like Tyrod Taylor. I think Tyrod Taylor is going to be playing from behind. He's a solid quarterback. He'll find a way to move the chains, get a couple of scores, and probably well over 250, 275 yards passing. Could even hit a higher ceiling if they go into a panic mode early. Jared Goff, another situation where I like his game script. I really like his game script quite a bit. He's going to be behind most likely against Green Bay. Green Bay should give up a lot of yards and a couple of scores to Goff. And then Zach Wilson, Carson Wentz, all those guys at the bottom. I'm just not a big fan of taking a strike with them. There's some talent down there at the bottom when you look at these lists, but most of them are predicated on going forward, meaning if there's an injury, if they finally bench Andy Dalton, finally bench Garoppolo, then you like the matchups. But unless that news changes, stick with the original list. And we'll give you one more quarterback to keep an eye on, mainly because the whole thing with Andy Dalton against Cincinnati, he might actually have a serviceable game, but I think Chicago is going to try to take the air out of the ball. I don't think they're going to try to chuck it all over the place, but he might get a touchdown or two. If you're in deeper leagues or 2-quarterback league, you might see him hit close to 250 yards passing. But don't expect Andy Dalton to be the Andy Dalton of old. Now we'll just go ahead and dive into the tight ends, and we'll do this really quickly because tight ends, pretty simple. If you've got Kelsey, Waller, Kittle, Hawkinson, Andrews, and Pitts, you got to put them in there because you drafted them high. I like Noah Fant a lot this week against that Jaguar defense. He would be at the top of the next tier. Gronk will probably have a pretty good game against Atlanta. People are going to start grabbing for Gronk, and then they're going to get mad around the middle of the season like, man, he's not doing anything. They're going to give him chances to score in the red zone, but that's it. You're not going to see Gronk moving the ball. Gronk is not a guy anymore in his career that he's going to be on the field a whole heck of a lot between the 20s. So he has a chance to score every week, but that's about it. The next guy is on this list. Tunyon should have a big game for Green Bay. I like Godaire's matchup against San Francisco. But Jared Cook goes to the top of this list. His matchup against the Dallas Cowboys should be phenomenal. Cole Kmet's a guy I'm keeping my eye on if Justin Fields ever becomes a starter, but right now it's not even worth talking about. Tyler Higbee should have a decent game. And then you go from there. Guy that you've seen a lot of people drop. Don't give up on Mike Gesicki. It was only week 1. And I believe when the dust settles and this Miami offense finds its personality for this year, I believe Gesicki is going to be a major part of that. So he's a guy you could pick up and stash on your bench, a guy you could look, if you're in a deeper league, you start him and you hope for the best right now. He's a guy that I'd be willing to bet on long term. Guys like Ferkser and Henry, those are guys that are, even Hooper. Those are guys that are touchdown dependent. So you're rolling the dice there. Jonnu Smith, though, is down on a lot of people's lists. He could have a breakout game, so keep an eye on him. He might be someone that's available in your league. And we won't do defenses on these. There's no real point because in most leagues, defenses are kind of interchangeable. They're kind of junk. And kickers, most leagues are getting rid of them. I'm in some leagues where we still have defenses that actually matter. Those are fun. But the ones that are junk, I mean, really, what is the point? What is the point? I don't see the point. If you're going to have defenses that average 6 points, 7 points a game, just get rid of it. It's irrelevant. We'll see you next weekend as we will do this every weekend, and then also be on the lookout for our Football Friday video. That's when we take some picks against the spread, and of course all the other content we have on all week long. Please like and subscribe today so we can keep bringing you this content. And thanks for listening to the Armchair Quarterbacks, the Handicappers, every Sunday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern till noon Eastern. We take all your stardom situms and we give you our picks, our DFS, all that stuff. A lot of fun with a lot of contributors. I'm Mac McGee. Thanks for listening and watching the Handicappers here on the Armchair Quarterbacks Network.